Okay, welcome back, everyone. We've got some really interesting market reports you've shared, and we're going to dig into them today.
Yeah, focusing on the Jamaican agricultural market, right? Looking at those recent trends from the analyses for the weeks ending May 24th and May 30th, 2025.
Exactly. So what we want to do here is, cut through the numbers, try and spot the big moves, maybe understand why they're happening.
And really pull out the key insights for you so you get a clear picture of what was going on in the market during that specific snapshot in time.
Right. Think of it like we're picking up the story from the data. We've got 2 weeks back to back, so we can see how things actually, shifted.
Uh-huh. It's not just a static picture.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So let's quickly recap that first week, the one ending May 24th, and then we'll jump straight into the latest stuff from May 30th, see what changed.
Okay. So casting our minds back to that week ending the 24th, the market already had some definite action points.
Yeah, I remember seeing that imported cauliflower really jumped out. It was, up over 31%? A huge jump.
Yeah, nearly JMD 2,000 a kilo. That kind of surge, it often points to, specific demand maybe from tourism.
Right, like maybe hotels gearing up or something, or maybe supply issues.
Exactly, or import disruptions. Meanwhile, local carrots had a pretty good week too, kept climbing steadily, up over 12%.
And green bananas, you can't forget those. Always a staple. They were up nearly 12% too.
Right, those feel like items with just solid underlying demand,
Definitely. And even pineapple, the cowboy type, was gaining a bit,
Right.
up over 7%. Those steady climbers, they give you a sense of where things are holding strong.
And local cauliflower was also moving up, over 6%. So yeah, some big spikes, but also some just steady positive movement.
But, the flip side was just as dramatic, wasn't it? That imported romaine lettuce. It just took a nosedive that week.
Oh yeah, completely tanked. Down by a third, 33%.
Wow. What causes a drop like that so sudden?
Well, that kind of price collapse usually screams oversupply. Or maybe a sudden dip in buyers. It's a sharp correction, whatever it was. And greenhouse local green sweet pepper also fell quite a bit, down 20%. The report actually mentioned a regional glut for that one.
Regional glut. Okay, so too much supply just piling up in certain farming areas.
Exactly, flooding the local market right there, and boom, the price tanks.
Makes sense. Sorrel was also down over 8%. That feels kind of seasonal though, right? Like maybe moving past its peak.
Probably seasonal, yeah. And sweet potato, another really key staple, it slipped over 8% too. But what was really interesting there was the regional picture.
Oh yeah, how so?
Well, in Clarendon, for instance, sweet potato prices crashed by over 41%.
40% in one parish. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's not just a market dip. That's like a localized collapse. Shows you how different things can be place to place.
For sure. Local time was also down a bit, over 6%. And again, the report said uneven regional performance.
Well, and even back then, in that first week, you could feel this underlying, volatility. Even for things where the average price didn't shift massively, like the other sweet peppers, red and yellow.
They were still swinging wildly underneath.
Yeah, the volatility rates were really high. It tells you prices were all over the place within the week or between different markets.
And Scotch bonnet hot pepper too, right? Those erratic movements. Down 25% here, up 25% there.
Exactly. St. Elizabeth down, St. Thomas up. That makes planning incredibly difficult, whether you're buying or selling.
So the takeaway from that first week, May 24th, was, the average market sentiment was kind of neutral, but underneath, loads of volatility.
Right. Almost 38% volatility overall. Some things, like that imported cauliflower, looked like maybe a strategic bet, while others, like the lettuce and green peppers, felt pretty risky at that point.
Okay, so that sets the scene. Let's shift gears then. Unpack the latest data you sent over the week ending May 30th. How did things evolve?
Well, interestingly, on the surface, the overall market seemed kind of similar again. Still largely neutral. Average prices only nudged up by like 0.43%. Tiny.
Okay, but I'm sensing a but here. The headline story wasn't that tiny average move, was it?
Absolutely not. The real story is that the volatility didn't just stick around, it actually ticked up slightly. 38.81%.
Still hovering around that high level then.
Exactly. And this period, it really feels like the market's kind of transitioning, moving towards the summer growing season. And, well, let's face it, that often brings unpredictable weather.
True. Okay, so volatility's still high. Where did we see the biggest price jumps in this latest week? Because Looking at the list, wow, imported romaine lettuce, what a turnaround.
Right, the comeback kid. After completely tanking the week before, it soared by 25% this week.
25% up.
Yeah.
After being 33% down.
Yep. Back up near GMD 990 a kilo. That massive reversal really suggests that whatever caused last week's drop glut, whatever it was, super short-lived.
And demand snapped right back. Maybe
Yeah.
that hotel sector getting closer to peak season.
That would be my guess. Or maybe supply tightened up fast. It's a wild swing, though.
Definitely. What else was climbing?
Green cabbage saw a pretty solid increase, up over 10.8%. And the report noted this wasn't just one spot. It was across places like Hanover, St. Mary, St. James.
Okay, so broader demand or maybe tighter supply for cabbage across the board.
Seems like it. Onions were up too, just over 10.7%.
Onions. They can be sensitive, right, to import stuff.
Very sensitive. Import challenges, foreign exchange, logistics, even local production dips. An onion price rise often flags one of those issues.
Gotcha. And a couple of other staples, pak choy and cantaloupes, also saw decent gains, both up over 8%.
Yeah, likely just good, steady consumer demand, maybe meeting slightly lower volumes available right then in the market. Nothing too dramatic, but solid increases.
Okay, so that's the risers. Now, who took the biggest hits this week?
Gungo Peas saw the most dramatic drop, down over 14%.
14%. That's quite a dip. Harvest time, maybe.
Could be a big harvest hitting the market all at once, or maybe demand just started tapering off for some reason.
And sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
They fell last week. Did they keep going down?
They did indeed. Another drop, about 10.15% this week, down around JMD 418 a kilo now.
And was that widespread again?
Yeah, the report mentioned key regions like St. Elizabeth, St. Catharines seeing declines, so maybe it's seasonal supply hitting its peak, or perhaps just, market fatigue, consistent supply driving prices down.
Right. And those sweet peppers, we talked about their volatility last week, still acting up.
Oh, big time. Both volatile and mostly falling in price. Local greenhouse green sweet peppers dropped another 12.5% overall.
Okay.
But get this. St. Mary saw a 25% drop specifically for those. Huge regional difference.
25% in one parish.
Wow. And yellow sweet peppers, they were down 7.5% on average, but that average hides a massive 50% price correction down in St. Elizabeth.
50%, half price in one region. That's insane volatility.
Exactly. So even if the average price for, say, red or yellow peppers didn't move much overall, that absolutely doesn't mean things were stable on the ground. Far from it.
So that brings us right back to that volatility story again.
Absolutely. Green sweet peppers were actually the most volatile commodity this week. Volatility index over 83%.
83. That's incredibly unstable.
And red and yellow weren't far behind, both over 70% volatility. When you see numbers like that, especially alongside falling or flat average prices, it just screams severe regional imbalance.
Meaning loads of supply driving prices down in some places, but maybe shortages or different pressures elsewhere.
Precisely. And hot pepper Scotch bonnet and West Indian red still showing really high volatility too, over 63%.
Even though Scotch bonnet prices overall nudged up a tiny bit.
Yeah, that average increase, just 2.59%, it completely masked those wild regional swings we saw continuing. St. Elizabeth up 50% for Scotch bonnet, while St. Mary was down 20%.
So the big consistent theme connecting both these weeks, it's just this intense volatility, often driven by what's happening in specific regions.
That's the core story right there.
Okay, let's try and pull these threads together then.
Yeah.
Looking at both weeks, May 24th and May 30th, what's the bigger picture?
Well, first, you see how quickly things can flip, right? Like that imported romaine lettuce doing a complete 180, huge drop, then a huge rebound.
Yeah, that was dramatic.
But then you see other things where the trend just continued. Like sweet potatoes keep sliding down, and those sweet peppers stay really volatile and generally trend downwards.
And that persistent volatility number hovering around 38% for both weeks. It's not just an abstract figure, is it?
Not at all. For you, the listener, whether you're involved in farming, trading, or just buying food, it translates directly into unpredictability, risk. It means the market for many items right now is just not a smooth, predictable ride.
Right. And the reports connect these bumps and swings to all those potential causes we touched on.
Exactly. Regional gluts, regional shortages, problems with imports, maybe logistics headaches, the shift in seasons towards summer, changes in demand, especially that tourism factor harvest timings playing out differently.
And just inconsistent yields from farms sometimes. It's a complex mix.
It really is.
So think about strategy. What did the source material suggest, given all this churn?
Well, the big takeaway, given the volatility, is that you need a targeted strategy. You can't just paint with a broad brush and assume general market trends apply to every crop or every parish.
Right. So identifying specific opportunities. They mentioned those high performers like lettuce making that comeback.
Cabbage, onions. Yeah. And maybe focusing on markets where demand seems strongest, like high traffic urban areas or especially that hotel sector as it ramps up.
Makes sense. But then there's the flip side, managing the risk for the items that are falling or just bouncing all over the place.
Right, things like gungo peas, sweet potato, those green peppers. The source talked about needing careful planning there, thinking about, maybe storage options if possible to wait for better prices.
Or looking at export markets. Or even value-added processing, turning them into something more stable.
Exactly. Finding ways to manage those price drops.
And then there's the future uncertainty. The report mentioned looking ahead. The summer season itself brings unpredictability.
Yeah, potential for difficult weather, and then there's always the hurricane season looming. That just adds another layer of potential disruption to this already quite volatile picture.
So the overall conclusion from the source seemed to be diversification is key. And really careful planning about when you plant and harvest.
That's it. Diversification across different crops and really strategic scheduling seem like the essential tools for navigating this kind of environment in the coming weeks and months.
So wrapping this deep dive up, what we've really seen over these 2 weeks is a market that might look kind of stable if you just glance at the overall average price.
Right, that tiny average change.
But underneath that surface, it was actually a sea of really intense, often unpredictable swings for individual commodities.
And these weren't just random fluctuations. They seem clearly driven by specific, often localized factors, regional supply, demand shifts, maybe import flows, very different from one place to the next sometimes.
Yeah, so this whole exercise, this deep dive, it was really about getting past that surface number to try and understand those forces underneath, peeling back the layers, like you said, crop by crop, week by week.
Hopefully giving you a clearer sense of the dynamics at play.
Definitely. And maybe it leaves you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on. Given this high volatility seems pretty persistent, and we know unpredictable weather season is approaching, what kinds of established market patterns, things maybe we thought were reliable, might get seriously disrupted? And how could those shifts ripple out and affect everything from farming decisions right down to the price you pay for things at the market or the grocery store in the weeks ahead?
Yeah. It certainly gives you something to think about, doesn't it? How resilient are those supply chains?
Exactly. Something to watch closely.